Hello, I'm Rick Bayshard, and thank you for visiting my channel. When I came upon the Course in Miracles in 1989, I was excited about the book. I liked what it was saying regarding its interpretation of sin and guilt and fear and the nature of God and love and all that. But my motivation at that time was I thought that this book would be a real good way for me to avoid my feelings. Because who wants to be disappointed or sad or aggravated? And if I had a way now of avoiding those things, that would be kind of cool, I thought. Probably a year later on, I was still disappointed and aggravated at the world at large. And I remember discussing with my sister that, gee, I like what this book is saying, but I am still, annoyed. I'm having feelings that I don't like. I want to avoid them. And she mentioned to me, or she responded saying, look, this book isn't about getting rid of your feelings. It's about being with them and understanding them. And that was an eye-opener for me because my goal, of course, was not to have them. But again, the Course itself reminds us that this is not about not having the human experience. If I cut my arm, I'm going to bleed. And if someone says something negative about me, I'm probably going to be insulted, or I'm going to feel guilty if I'm not able to do something for you that you were hoping I would do. Or I'm going to worry about the politics at large. The world is full of worry. And again, that is an ego dynamic because the world was made, again, as a way for us not to look within. It's a proverbial distraction. And feelings are a big part of that because everything we feel here is easily, it is easily blamed on what's outside of us. If I feel good now and someone says something negative about me, well, I felt good a moment ago. You're the cause of my feelings. And that's not the case. The ego made this world and all the problems within it so that we could have an explanation for why we don't feel good, why we're upset, why we're worried, why we're alone, why we're depressed. But those are not the reasons. The only reason we are ever upset about anything is because, albeit out of our awareness, the metaphysical mistaken belief that we have left our source at the mind level. And so we don't want to look at that, and the ego solution to that is to make up the world and have it be what it is. And we all know, if you're watching this, how complicated it is and how disappointing it can be, and all the myriad amount of feelings that we have, as a way of not going back to that mind level where we could choose differently. And so we're down here putting out all these fires and trying to manage the world so we don't feel bad or disappointed, but we can't do that. People are going to die. We're going to be terminated from jobs maybe. The climate is changing. There's plenty here to worry about and have feelings about. And that is a perfect distraction, again, for the ego's dynamic. But that's why, in part, that the world is a classroom. Because what will invariably happen is that, we're going to try to manage all this world so we don't have feelings, but it's not ever going to work. And so it's going to bring us to a place where something else has to work in it because my way isn't doing that. And what the Course does is then provide us the principles to understand why we're feeling what we're feeling and how it's not for the reasons we think. It's not because you insulted me, or it's not because we're in a relationship and you're leaving me and I'm losing love and I feel really bad about that. That's not the reason you're feeling bad, because someone has left you. You feel bad because at a whole nother level, out of your awareness, out of your consciousness, you believe you've left your source, and that is the pain that you're feeling. But here in the world, you're attributing it to the other things. Someone's left you, or the climate change, or politics, or you've lost your job. And so that is why the world's going to be a classroom for us, because what will happen is we trying to figure it all out and manage our job and manage people in our life so they don't leave us doesn't work. And remember, we're trying to manage these things so that we can avoid the feelings. And it's impossible, because even if they don't want to leave us, they could die by cancer, and we're still going to have experienced that loss. And that's why the Course reminds us that trials in life are simply lessons presented once again for us to choose differently. And what is that choice? That choice is to understand that what I'm feeling isn't because you left me. It's because on another level, I believe I've left my source. And I don't want to look at that. I don't want to look at that. And I repress it, I deny it, and say, this is the reason. And it's a perfect ploy for the ego because it keeps us here in this world. We never get back to the mind level where we could choose differently, choose love. Because again, that in part we don't want to, because we do like the idea of being separate in this world, which is another video. So what we want to do is, as we begin to study A Course in Miracles and its teachings, is be able to look at what the world is and how we go through it and how difficult it is with all the feelings and pain, and understand that I can look at this differently. And I can reinterpret what my eyes perceive. And that process is really forgiveness, because I'm now changing, I'm now looking at the world and my life within it with a different teacher. But the good news in that is that that process of looking at the world differently and the feelings that we seem to be having based on the world outside of us are not because of the world outside of us. And now we begin to own our feelings. We no longer are blaming people for how we feel or the world at large. And as we begin to get that, we're going to come to a place where we realize it's okay. You know, I don't have to, lose my cool because someone cut me off in traffic or whatever it might be. And as we do that, it's going to be a process. But eventually we'll come to a place where things like that will happen. We'll feel insulted, or someone will leave us, or we're going to have feelings about a myriad amount of things, but we're going to realize it's okay, because we'll realize those aren't the reasons I'm upset with. In fact, the Course tells us you're never really upset for the reasons you think. The reason is always the same, although it's out of our awareness. The reason we're upset about anything is because at the metaphysical level we believe we've left our source. And so here we are in this world, kind of stuck, thinking I'm upset because of this and that and so on. But this, in the end, is important to understand, and it's really good news, because as we evolve in our spiritual journey, it's going to start with us, most likely, with an intellectual understanding and basis, at least of what the Course is telling us, of how to be with and how to look at the world around us. But it's that looking properly, with the proper teacher within us, that allows us to be at peace with our feelings. We're always going to be upset when somebody dies. It's not about being crass. We're going to experience that loss. But we'll also be able to connect the dots and realizing that that loss is just a small mirror reflection of the bigger loss that we're too afraid to look at. And the Course is trying to bring us back there to that bigger loss that we believe happened, to realize there was no loss. That we don't need to project that into a world where somebody dies and say that's the reason I'm unhappy. So that is the roadmap to getting back home. And in fact, the goal of A Course in Miracles is not to teach us what love is. It says that at the very beginning. This Course will not teach you the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. Its goal is peace. And how do we get to peace? We get to peace through reinterpreting our perceptions and realizing that what people do in the world will always cause us some anxiety and depression, because we want the world to be what we need is necessary for us to feel safe. And if we apply these principles and look at these things differently, we'll reinterpret them differently, and we'll begin to realize it's okay. And so we'll have these dynamics of being human psychologically, but we'll be at peace with our anger. We'll be at peace with our sadness. Now, it may still feel sad, but there's going to be part of us that can be at peace with our tears. And once we get to that place, as we get to that place, we will begin to let go of this world in a sense that we won't have a need that it must be what we think it should have for us to feel safe and happy. And that place of peace is a prerequisite to beginning to get back to the mind level, to the part of our mind that chooses and decides, where we can choose and look to our right side, so to speak, and see the Holy Spirit, see love, and realize what they're saying to us is nothing has happened. You are a child of God. You cannot change that. You can believe in sin, but you can't make it true. And that is really good news. And because that will remind us that we are as God made us, and that cannot change. But on a practical level here in the world, it's a process. And it's not easy because I didn't want to have feelings, so I got into A Course in Miracles, and lo and behold, I'm having more feelings than I ever thought I had. But it's okay. And that's the thing. It's okay to be upset and angry. You don't even have to understand everything. Just realize that this is part of the journey, and use the world as a classroom and not the ego's design, which is a prison, which will keep you stuck because you'll be constantly trying to manage the world to make it be what you need it to be. And if you're over 30, you probably realize at this point it's not going to work. But you can feel good about realizing you don't have to make the world be what you need it to be. You just need to work on yourself. And then the world can be what it is. And you'll look at it smilingly and realize that nobody is ever harmed here. People are just afraid that do mean things because they're afraid. And there'll be empathy, there'll be compassion, and you'll be at peace. And that is, in part, a big part of our journey. And that's where we want to go. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please feel free to hit a like and subscribe to my channel. And I look forward to seeing you again in the near future.